So they ask you to check it. If it's not working, then press here.
Nope.
So let me check how it looks on the stream. You are looking great. We are ready to go. Yeah.
Well, hi everyone, thanks for coming. Today we're going to talk about the need for innovative financial instruments to decarbonise hard-to-abate sectors. We've got a very interesting panel, very mixed set of experiences. I'm Mark Preston. I'm a Senior Policy Manager at Bologna, an international climate NGO, working on industrial decarbonisation, focusing on hard-to-abate sectors. Cement, steel, and chemicals tend to be those that fit that criteria. And I work primarily in Brussels in climate policy. I've been asked to give a bit of a summary of Bologna's take on these sectors. In the sense of industrial decarbonisation, we find that these are sectors that provide valuable infrastructure that we will need to decarbonise other sectors. I'm looking at a wind turbine there, which obviously is made of steel. These materials will be very much needed to bring us to net zero. But they are themselves large contributors to climate change. So we need to figure out how to decarbonise these in a way. Cement is a big challenge. I won't go too much into the detail because we're an expert in cement here. But 2/3 of the process of making cement, 2/3 of the emissions from making cement come from the chemical process of calcination. The other third come from the combustion of fuels to reach that temperature, which means that to decarbonise cement, it's very limited options. There are some interventions that could be done in terms of circularity. We could explore some alternative cement propositions, but this can be quite challenging, especially if we are to obtain safety standards. So effectively, it means that cement has very few options other than carbon capture and storage, which is itself quite challenging. But the point is, cement is a hard-to-abate sector. There are limited options, but there are options. So we need to also rethink a little bit what we understand with the term hard-to-abate. If we have a technology such as CCS, which is made available in hard-to-abate, is not so hard-to-abate. With steel, we have similar issues of having blast furnaces, primarily running on coal. The shift is, we are effectively shifting towards direct reduction of iron, where we can go towards natural gas and fossil gas. Now we're facing some challenges of how we're going to be able to phase out that fossil gas in the future. Will we be able to generate sufficient hydrogen or sufficient greenness to be able to sustainably produce steel without overburdening the energy system? So we've done a lot of work to make sure that there are very strict standards on the way in which we produce hydrogen from the grid, such that if green hydrogen is generated, we're not eating into the energy transition, and making sure that additional renewable electricity is generated to generate the hydrogen. Otherwise, it runs the risk of massively increasing emissions from the energy system itself. We have a couple of papers coming out imminently, including on chemicals from my colleague Ivan, which we'll share in due course. And we have another paper on steel, which will be coming out very soon. We urge you to keep an eye on our website, and we will explore some of the issues in a bit more detail. I do now want to introduce our panel. I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves and a little bit about the organisation we do, and then we will into some questions. So, Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily Birch. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst at Carbon Initiative, and we are a global NGO working to mobilise capital markets to action. And my focus is on the support of government and development policies that we need to help unlock private capital for climate investments.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm Dong Hyun Go from Solution for Our Climate, SLBs. So this our organization is non-profit organization based on advocacy and research for decarbonizing in the sector and also the administration from the more robust to the more renewable and clean energy. So for that, we are researching a lot about the financial market status and the investment status of the political sector and also the steel or industry sector as well. And also we want to champion and also research and things like that. Yeah. So I keep share more detail during my speech. Yeah.
Thank you, Ronnie. My name is Okhans Rubenge. I'm Chief Strategy with Rwanda Finance Limited. We're the agency position in Rwanda and trying to transform Rwanda as a financial services hub. So very much working in the financial services center and to see how we can bring the financial sector to support all the key sectors of the economy. Thank you.
Hi, well, thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm Andrew from the Global Cement and Concrete Association. We represent the majority of production of cement outside China, and we have 2 key members within China, including the China National Building Materials Company. And we've got a roadmap. Everyone has a roadmap. We've got a roadmap to zero by 2050, launched in 2021. I guess the thing that's key about it is that those members I just mentioned, the majority of production, the CEOs have committed to that roadmap. So I'll probably touch a little bit more on that because that explains the different technologies that we need to get to zero, the policies required to get there, and therefore the investment needed.
I'll start off with you, Lily. Could you give us a bit of a insight on what you think the role is of development finance institutions to mobilize capital to decarbonise the sector?
So for emerging market actors in these sectors, they are facing a really big struggle on accessing finance at a rate. They need low cost and long-term capital, but they're really limited, mostly because they have effectively limited by their sovereign credit rating. So that sets a ceiling on whatever their credit rating will be, which sets a ceiling on how to finance it access. And this is an increasing problem. 60% of emerging market developing countries have seen a credit rating downgrade in the last 10 years. So development banks can help bridge between private investors and these emerging market actors, but also the most innovative technology actors. And in our recent study on development banks, we found that although they have this capacity to mobilize capital, they're really under using it. So only about 35% of development banks have capital mobilization targets. And of the ones that do, these targets are quite limited. They don't really link to climate targets, so they're not necessarily that fit for purpose anyway. And this is probably reflected in their capital mobilization ratio. So even we looked at European BMI specific report, but EBRD, EIB, their mobilization of capital stands at 15% of their balance sheets. But for some of the smaller DFIs, it's like 1% of their balance sheets. So it's a really tiny rate. So we've just set out a few recommendations on how they can unlock that potential. So one of them is just setting targets, setting stronger capital mobilization targets, linking them into climate targets. And there's a few other more simple actions. I mean, you probably have people say this week about like, oh, they just need to take more risk, they need to spend plans, but it's a bit tricky. But there's some simple, more actionable targets that they can do, like increase on-selling. So once you've invested in a concrete plant and it's green zone home, green concrete plant, it's up and running, it's operational, its risk is lower. Then the DFI can look to exit that investment and pass it on to a private investor who can move on. It's more appealing to the private investor at that point. But they're not really on-selling. So that's one of the really easy ones to be building on-selling strategies. They can help unlock massive amounts of private capital. And then a lot of percentages for you, sorry. And then they need to use strong green definitions because only about the European DFIs looks at only half of using EU taxonomy. And if you get these development banks to apply strong green definitions, that will ensure their funding truly Paris aligned assets. Otherwise, risk supporting incremental change, just slight energy efficiency gains, that sort of thing, which might actually just lock in carbon emissions, don't fully transform the sector. And then there's just a couple others we were looking at. One of them is looking to increase local currency green bond issuance, and then if you invest in local currency green bond issuance, you can help develop the market that we talk about, and you can help you then have local currency that you can use to lend to local investors. And our final big ask, which probably lots of people are asking for, is that DFIs need to open up access to the global emerging markets risk database. This is an amazing database of emerging market risk that they can use, that they're using to inform their own investments, but private investors can't access this. And so if they make this available to private investors, that would help them realise that actually their risk perceptions could be higher than actually is, and they will take their investments.
Thanks, it's very interesting. Duncan, have you made any comments on your understanding of what we need in terms of climate finance policy?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, so actually for the decarbonizing hard-to-abate sector, we need a lot of investment from the public sector, from the private sector. So in case of the South Korea, there's six large steel industry companies. You need a lot of fund to transition to green hydrogen steel, but the investment from the government is quite small compared to the other European countries. So we need a lot of funds. But for causing the kind of tension, I want to add some point that the importance of the guideline and governance of the green bond market, I don't know how to, maybe it can be climate bond sector or financial market sector. So to explain that, I want to share my experience. Actually, our organization filing first greenwashing claim in South Korea about 3 years ago. That was about the product. But this year, we also claimed two greenwashing claim project. One is about one sustainable bond on the global bond market, and also one the green bond in the local market. So first one is CAPCO, which is a state-owned utility company. They issued their sustainable bond in the global market. But of course, they invest those kind of money to their green transition, but we can assure that they really investing on that money to their green project, because they face a lot of deficit after Russian-Ukraine war. Yeah. So because of that, they have no capacity to invest in a lot of the green project, and most of the debt deficit from they are reliant on fossil fuel. So because they rely still on more than 30% of the coal, and so but there's not enough infrastructure to monitor this kind of money flow, cash flow, and so that is the difficulty that we figure out. How do you figure out that sustainable financing goes through not to the fossil fuel operation, to the green, more investing in green transition. And also, if they invest in their money to their green project, but it's only 10% of their financing. And they also financing 90% of their bond to the just general bond. And then they operating as they did. So then there's no transition anymore. So this kind of problem still needs some fix that we need for the more expanding the financing for the green. We need monitoring not only the focused on project. We should also see the entire corporate vision and ambition for the nature renewable and transition roadmap. So that can be also considered on the framework of the sustainable financing as well. And also another case is that we also filing greenwashing for the local green bond. It was based on Korean taxonomy, which is very similar to European taxonomy. But actually, when they issued the bond, they said that we will investing on this money to the renewable project. But after the final report, they invested them on the arranged plant financing. But there's no way to just figure out this problem because it is included in the taxonomy, so there's other issues. This also in the taxonomy, so there's no problem. But renewable and natural gas is totally different when you consider the impact on the climate. Of course, there can be some need for the transition period, but for that, there's a lot of investors to want to invest in their money to the green project, not that kind of transition period project. So for that, also you need a lot of data. So if there's some penalty or something like that, that can be fixed. So like a sustainability bond or another more like a strengthening initiative, that's really important, and it should support it by some monetary system, something like that, to make more greener the whole financial market. Okay. That's my point.
Thanks. Hortense, what's your take on this question? And we have mentioned the taxonomy. You've also been working on the London taxonomy. What's your take on this question? What are the instruments that we need for hard-to-abate sector?
Thank you so much. I think I echo the same sentiments that have been said. In the case of Rwanda, we actually had the first green bond issuance, and it was in support of a hydropower project. So this is a local private company that has issued a bond in support of a hydropower project. They were able to raise about $7 to $8 million US over a 7-year tenure. So this is something that is relatively new, very new actually, not just in Rwanda, but also in the region. And we're seeing a lot more of it because it's an alternative form of financing. When Lily, you were talking about the banks, that's more traditional and they're often risk averse. There's so many things you have to actually cross-check before you can easily access their financing. So we're seeing a lot more of the private sector looking towards other alternative funds, and the capital markets is actually really the biggest, I would say, window with how they're looking to mobilize, especially domestic, even, I would say, resources. And so why it ties now to the taxonomy, which we also just recently developed and are looking to publish with support of the Climate Bonds Initiative and Amber Global, is because it at least gives us a good standard classification of what green projects are. And I think that is really the biggest barrier that we have faced most often, because we don't have a common understanding of what's a green project. And when even private actors are able to put together their projects, they don't really have a clear criteria as to, okay, yes, there's ROI, which we have to check, but then in terms of the impact metrics, that actually align with climate resilience or supporting green, there's no clarity on that. And I think this is really a game changer. If you're able now to have a taxonomy, private sector is able to now see how to position their projects better and be able to now tap into some of these different instruments, whether it's bond issuances. We also had a sustainability-linked bond issuance in support of more housing projects. But now beyond even the capital markets, for the case of Rwanda, we have now transformed also into a financial hub. And what that means is that now we're looking at also other legal structures that investors could leverage to be able to support, again, I would say, resource mobilization towards these sectors. So you're having a lot of investors setting up SPVs specifically in support of a particular project. It's a special purpose vehicle. So for example, we have one called the Africa Climate Ventures. It's a partnership with US-based investors, and they're looking to invest in also renewable energy projects in the region. And so they're able to set up the SPV more so to mobilize capital from different, I would say, jurisdictions. And the carrot there is because it's the most cost-effective way in terms of when you're investing and also repatriating your capital. So again, it's an avenue to be able to see how to facilitate, again, capital deployment and resource mobilizations towards these sectors, because to us, these are the big sectors of the economy. You're talking about cement, you're talking about energy, you're talking about hydropower. they're the foundation of our economies. And I think if we're able now to see how they're aligned to the green agenda, it will be through those different instruments that also tap into not just the local, but the international, I would say, investor community as well. That's what I contribute. Thank you.
So thanks, Andrew. So in the cement and concrete sector, one of the clearest examples of the hard-to-abate sector, what's your take on what's been raised here? What are the challenges that your sector is facing in raising finance for green projects?
Well, thank you very much. And Mark, you're obviously absolutely right in terms of identifying that within the cement sector, we're harder to abate because we've got the calcination. You okay? We've got the calcination of the limestone, which emits CO2, which is about 2/3 of the emissions. So fundamentally, we do ultimately need to have carbon capture and storage. Our roadmap to 2050 net zero does say that we'll get completely alternative chemistry solutions, novel cements in play by 2050, but only to the order of magnitude of about 5%. So we need the finance on the CCUS. Even if we are out, even if the experts across the industry and beyond the industry are wrong, and that 5% of complete alternatives is double that, or 10 times that at 50%, we still have 50% of the 4.2 billion tons of cement that need to have carbon capture and storage. So there is a huge amount that needs to be done. We cannot ignore the carbon capture storage story. For that to be investable, it's in the developing country, in the developed world, it is approaching being investable. If you are involved in developing your company's new headquarter building and you want to have CCUS cement in your headquarter building, you will pay ultimately double the cost of current cement for that CCUS cement. Now that sounds a lot, but your headquarter building will have probably about 15% of its total cost at build, not operation, just build, will be the concrete frame, of which half is the construction process and the formwork and the reinforcement. If you then go all the way back to the cement powder in the concrete, doubling the cost of the cement powder will only add 3 or 4% to the cost of your building. Your concrete dam, for your hydroelectric power, there's more cost in the concrete material, so it might be 15 or 20%. But still, it's a small percentage. If I was to say to any of you, you can tell your boss that you can have CCUS cement in your new headquarter building at only single-digit percentage, you'd bite my hand off and say that's amazing. Now that means that if you've got green procurement, you've got an investable proposition. We have a challenge in emerging economies where actually there isn't the funding to pay for the green premium. So therefore we're looking at things like Book and Claim to be able to get people in the north who want to pay but might not have the CCUS project available to them locally to be able to effectively pay for the CCUS project in the emerging economies. And that isn't magic. I mean, we've got to make sure that's all, no double counting, and all those sorts of things are in place. But that gives you a mechanism for the CCUS. I've spoken a lot about CCUS. CCUS will give 36% of our decarbonisation. So where's the other 64% come from? Well, actually, a lot of it comes from known technologies that are applied today that aren't widely implemented in emerging economies, for which we need finance. So we've got things like calcined clay that can be used alongside the CO2 intensive cement in a ratio of ultimately 50-50, currently probably 30-70. But if it's a ratio of 30-70, you're taking 30% of the CO2 out by using calcined clay. And it's a known technology, there's nothing sort of exciting about it, and it's very investable. And that's where we want that investment to happen. And in our sector, we don't have an option A or an option B or an option C, which means you might have a stranded asset. Great point about the stranded asset. In our sector, look at our roadmap online, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 levers, all of which are needed. So if you invest in a calcined clay plant, you'll need that, and that will be compatible with the clinker supply chain, which needs the CCUS. You're not investing in calcined clay as a cheaper short-term option, which will then be a stranded asset by 2050. We need that as well as the CCUS. By using that calcined clay, you're reducing the CCUS you need by 30%, if it's 30-70. But actually, by the time we get to 2050, it's probably all 50-50. So we'll halve the amount of CCUS we need if we invest in these other known technologies that are widely adopted now, but need to be more widely and more deeply adopted.
Before going to the questions, does anyone have any reactions on what others said?
Just say on this full point of carbon need all the technologies. I was just at a breakfast thing about insurance, and there was a guy saying, "Oh, but insurance is scared of investing in green ammonia and shipping because they don't know if it's green ammonia or if it's going to be methanol." All these things are probably going to be all of it. And it is a danger that we wait for what we think is going to be the right solution to this hard-to-abate.
Now, I know that I'm employed by the Global Cement and Concrete Association, but my answer to that is not totally trivial. Invest in cement. If you don't know how to decarbonise a different sector, actually, not only do we have a global roadmap, but we're rolling out national roadmaps, many of which have done, which are indicating the local opportunities and challenges. Actually, it's all the same 7 levers around the world for cement and concrete. The reason we're doing the national roadmaps is partly to prove that it is the same 7 technologies. There's no magic bullet in the southern hemisphere compared to the northern hemisphere. And in addition, we do the national ones because there are some variation in the percentage contribution of them. But in terms of investment delivering carbon reduction, we think we are probably ahead of the game of anywhere else. And we don't have that risk of stranded asset of which horse do you back. So, I mean, it's not a total trivial answer. And we need 4.2 billion tons of it because we need the hydropower, we need the clean water, we need the hospitals, and so we need to deliver the SDGs, half of which cannot be delivered without cement and concrete fundamentally behind it. So choose our sector to invest in.
No, I have a question which came to mind in the context of the taxonomy. So we have a European EU taxonomy, there's a real taxonomy, a random taxonomy. Are we at risk of having a whole bunch of taxonomies which aren't really in line with each other and sort of fragmenting the financial sector?
Okay, I can go ahead. I think, well, for us, the main thing that we were very interested in is that it was a taxonomy that's interoperable. And so we looked at different taxonomies and we really saw that the EU taxonomy stands out in terms of being a benchmark taxonomy currently. And when you look at the investors also, who we have a lot of, tend to align with that criteria. And so it's a question of, okay, if you want to mobilize capital beyond your domestic capital, then you need to be able to align, with the set criteria. And what are most investors sort of aligned to? It's the EU taxonomy. So we developed ours to be interoperable, to cater to the local, to customize it to our local needs, but it also have the same scientific, I would say, criteria that the EU uses. And when you even look at the continent, I think I will reserve my perspective just to the African continent. You have Kenya, you have South Africa, you have Egypt and others coming up, and they're all referencing also the EU taxonomy. So it really goes to say that for now it still stands as the main benchmark, and we'll continue to leverage it. And of course, at the end of the day, the taxonomy is dynamic, so we have to make sure we update it as time goes on.
Yeah, for the taxonomy, also in Korea's taxonomy is quite similar to European taxonomy. The problem is that it takes about 3 or 4 years after the framework is established. But still, the green bond market based on taxonomy not that big enough. So I guess the reason why it's not enough is that there's not sufficient benefit for the company to issue the green bond through the taxonomy because so for that we need more incentive for the company to issue the green bond through the taxonomy, and it means that more investing for the green market is needed, even in the private sector and also from the public sector. So that is the important, and also still a lot of green bond is through for the not for the green project, but as I said, much more the project for the transitioning, like especially much more focused on natural gas rather than renewable energy project. So when you check the portion of the money go to the natural gas or something like that, it's much more bigger than the renewable project. So which means that still it is much more used for the sustaining their project rather than triggering real transition. So it means that also we need, as I said, so firstly there is more incentive to the much more green project, but there will be some different for the incentive or the transition project if the company is not enough ambition target for the transition to like that. So as in, for example, in Southeast Asian countries, they established their own taxonomy system like red and green and yellow, something like that. So that makes a difference in the incentive. So we should learn from that how we boosting the taxonomy and the green bond market system, and also we need to think that how we link this taxonomy system into the corporate disclosure, ISB also take a discussion here as well. So that if that is possible, then there's much more invest can be through the bond and stock market as well. So yeah, that's my point.
Just coming quickly, I think there is a lot of work going into trying to make taxonomies interoperable. So yesterday was at the Azerbaijan Pavilion where they announced the interoperability roadmap that they're doing. At Funds, we're working with PRI and UNFFI on an interoperability tool so that you, the sort of idea is that you can put in your sector, your activity, and see what the sort of, how it matches with all the taxonomies. So you can see, you know, what's the threshold, and then you can choose the sort of best threshold to ensure you, align with the base credit. And I think those efforts are really important, but actually most of the taxonomies are already pretty interoperable. They're already pretty in line. Like, China and EU taxonomy, they look very, very different, but they're probably in line. I just got a text from someone saying that the UK is finally released its taxonomy consultation. Haven't looked at it yet, but hopefully it will be basically based on the EU taxonomy. But they want to make it look a bit special. They want to make it look like their own. But this is the same criteria.
Okay, thanks. Andrew, you did mention public procurement. I was curious if there's any views here on the role of public procurement as a level for this transition.
I'll just repeat it then. So on public procurement, we've actually just launched, we've done a soft launch. The German government's on Monday going to be announced down launching definitions for low carbon cement and concrete at the product stage. So for procurement. So fundamentally, how do we know that when we have green public procurement or sustainable public procurement, just as you've got a taxonomy for investment in climate bonds, we need to have common definitions for what is it you're purchasing. And so we've established these global definitions, and sort of the eureka moment is we've got a mechanism within it, so it's interoperable between different countries, where most countries will do product CO2 footprint in the same way, but there are some countries who do it slightly differently, and we've got a trick in it to make it interoperable so that it's a consistency and comparability. So hopefully that will, it'll enable confidence in what public procurement and private procurement is. And I'm listening to you guys now as to what difference that makes to you investing in the sector.
It's a very big point because also for Rwanda, we are literally looking to launch the green public procurement guidelines, and it's also linked. We're looking to see how it can be linked to the taxonomy. So it's under a different program called climate budget tagging. And so when you look at Rwanda, government is the biggest industry, especially for most of these large-scale projects. So really, if you want to achieve scale or low-hanging fruit, public investment is actually a good way to see how it can be aligned as a way to trigger the market. So the taxonomy will, of course, remain as a standard that serves both public and private. But right now, really looking at having public procurement guidelines, it's really a first step. But we're also looking to pilot and see how even most of the public expenditures can actually have sort of that ESG metric in terms of disclosure reporting, and it can really, I would say, have a big impact in the economy. And I think also to the point that was raised in terms of taxonomy implementation, it's a great point that was raised in terms of it takes time, right? There's a grace period, and there's also, I would say, a particular type of company that it first suits. When you look at least for Rwanda, even on the continent, majority are mostly SLBs or smaller, I would say, organizations. So right now, the start is to look at the larger, I would say, large-scale companies that can start, and then to see how to customize, I would say, the taxonomy further down the line towards meeting SLBs as well, eventually.
Yeah, so I also agree with that. There's also a lot of application is needed to the public procurement as well. And so to boosting that, the taxonomy or something or the green bond initiative should be more strengthened, because if we have that support from the green procurement that we need, then it can be much more expanded to, and there is a much more opportunity that the company transition to the more green project if they supported by the government market. But so for that, it is important that corporate should set up much more genius plan for the transition, because if the government will support and also if there is support from the finance sector, then their transition can be supported. So it means that they should, because most of the company always saying that there's no market for the green steel, and also no future in there, and they see this demand for the steel, coal-based steel, something like that. So that, but the government can support, and also the financial market will support that market, then there's a picture. So it means that they should invest a lot to the transition. In case of the steel company, as I said before, is even also there is not much support from the government, but they did not invest there by themselves, because they have enough cash, but they not investing a lot to their green project. They are much more investing when they are sustaining their financially, like that. So it just kind of lack of ambition from the corporate that decrease the growth of the green financial market. So I think several points should get together, like government side support of the green procurement and financial sectors, and plus the securing more detailed governance and monitoring system of the bond market. But without the corporate ambition, it's not impossible. So that is also should be important.
Yeah, I think just again what we're talking about so important. There's no different figures, but governments worldwide, 25% is still demand, 40% is spent demand. Like it's a huge difference. And obviously, like you mentioned, it's a decrease of cost. But when it's you're building a hospital, I mean, building a hospital, like what percentage of that cost? It's really tiny. and it's hard to sell to governments to pay for something that's more expensive. But if you think about the impact it will have on their industry and how can transform their economies to build up these new technologies.
Thanks for listening to this. Just getting plugged at the moment, we have been working in responsive lead markets of effectively getting governments to have green procurement criteria to favorise clean technologies in production processes, etc. You should look at our website. We just published a green procurement report. I wanted to pick up on something again you mentioned earlier about this sort of booking claim and paying for junior cement occurring elsewhere. In the EU at the moment, there is an ongoing discussion with regards to green claims. So effectively, what kinds of claims can be made on the basis of the purchase of, for example, going to the carbon market, carbon credits. Since you're talking about innovative financial instruments, policies, etc., there's an emerging discussion of going from compensatory claims towards contribution claims. Is this something that the financial sector is looking at, is thinking about? What are your views on this?
Yeah. Also, I joined a lot of discussion during this COP 29 about the voluntary carbon market, and also there's a discussion about pension credit, especially this is much more focused on coal based out of the coal based down, only coal based down of the Southeast Asian area. But this kind of mechanism can be, we can thinking about that can be applicable to the other hard-to-abate sector because the mechanism is similar that to investing a lot to the hard-to-abate sector, then it can be much more incentive to the other sector. But the problem is that if everything is solved by the carbon credit, but until then, finally, somehow remain because everyone wants to just invest in carbon credit and do not really struggle to reduction their own emission. That someday there would be something remain in 2050 because it is not carbon credit is just a credit. It's not a real emission. So it is much more focused on something like that. If there's a solution like a power plant, something like that, there can be some time for the hard-to-abate sector if they invest in carbon credit that they can reduce the ozone emission, and then for that period they can invest their own money or other financial funding to their technology because it takes much more time. So that can be balanced for that. But I can show that this kind of carbon credit mechanism can be a long-time solution for hard-to-abate sector.
Rwanda is very new to this. I know we're working towards a carbon credit market framework, but to be honest, for us, it's more looking to try and understand it and see how it applies to the different sectors. I know forestry is a big one, but in terms of the impact really to greenhouse gas emissions, reduction, carbon emissions, I think it's more still something that we're looking to understand better.
Fundamentally, the booking claim is attractive to a sector which is it's very inefficient to transport the product. So why create the near zero or zero carbon product in your country, and then the market for that is in Europe or in America? It doesn't make any sense to transport that product. So without double counting, you take the label of that great product that you produced and you move it somewhere else. Someone pays that extra, and that therefore secures the financial viability of that low carbon near zero facility in your country. So that's the fundamental premise of it, and it's hard to see that that doesn't have a role to play.
I think probably just to echo you, I think the role of carbon credit is probably, it's not, I don't know, I personally don't really care about whether people use it to offset, to claim their green, they're either going to go down a transition pathway or not. They're really valuable when it comes to financing what otherwise wouldn't be financed, where conservation, whatever it may be. It's, voluntary carbon market is like 1% of global emissions. It's not going to do much, but that's a big old amount of money for conservation, for restoration, and those sorts of things. So I think that's the way we need to think about them and make sure those are credible projects. And then kind of who buys them? That's nice. That's fine. That's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Just back to take on this. On the voluntary carbon market, you're right, it's a very small amount. It's very small. We have some ongoing reports of the credits that are generated often don't actually generate the climate benefits that they are portrayed to generate, especially in the land sector. I think the Britain County approach is slightly different to the conventional carbon market because it is very targeted. Yeah, thank you for your takes. We're almost out of time, so before I ask my last question, is there any questions here? Okay. So one of the things that's also part of this discussion is policy. Maybe as part of a bit of a wrap up, what would you say are your key policy demands so that you can be able to best use and leverage the financial instruments that you're working with? What do we need from local governments and from the UN process to be able to make sure that you can actually use these green bonds, these taxonomies, these different land systems? What are your main asks?
I came prepared for this one. So this document is going to be launched on Tuesday. If you go to the back of it, you get lots of case studies on what our members have done last year, which are brilliant. But if you go sort of a third of the way through it, you will get to our roadmap. And if you don't know our roadmap, you'll get a quick reminder of it. It looks like that. And funnily enough, business as usual goes up to the right, and our strategy goes down to the right, goes to zero. So there's 7 beautiful colors on that. And in the subsequent double page spreads, we look at each of those colors. And on the left-hand side, there's some black text, which tells you what that lever is and what that color is, one of which is CCUS. It also tells you what our progress has been in the last couple of years on that. Our transparent reporting for our sector due to competition law is 2 years behind, so therefore it only goes up to 2022. That's on the left-hand side. If you look carefully, you can see on the right-hand side this blue font. That blue font is the policy asks for that color segment, for that technology lever, and it's summarized there. And then there's some lovely pictures on the right-hand side, which are just quick case studies which point you to the big case studies that I mentioned right at the beginning at the back of the document to find out more. So we talked a little bit about CCUS, we talked a little bit about the really difficult things to invest in. But where I started off was there's some really easy, low-hanging fruit that need investment right now that will decarbonise the sector in countries, mostly the global south, where they haven't adopted them. One of them, which is brilliant, is using waste materials. So our colleagues in Latin America, they lament the fact that the waste is going to landfill and emits loads of methane. Our friends in Africa have initiatives called Stopping Open Waste Burning. Sintef out of Northern Europe has a big initiative about reducing ocean plastics, which is focused in Asia. Methane from landfill, open waste burning, plastics getting into river courses and into oceans. All those three are not unique to Latin America, Africa, and Asia. They happen all those places. In all those places, treating municipal waste is a problem. And in all those places, that municipal waste could be used in cement kilns to replace fossil fuels. Where the policies are right, municipal waste is replacing 80 or 90% of the fossil fuels in kilns. If you're worried about the emissions, come and talk to me. I tell you what, the European Union are really worried about emissions, and this happens in Europe all the time. On average, 50% of the fuel is from waste. So it's not a problem. It can be done because of the high temperature in the kiln and a long time the waste is in the kiln burning. And it can happen in emerging economies. In Mexico City, with 22 million people, the investment has happened. That's what we're talking about, investment. The investment has happened such that 35% of the waste from that 22 million population city is used in cement kilns. And a subset of that, 100% is diverted from landfill, not straight to the kiln. If possible, it's recycled and it's reused, and the remnant is used in the cement kiln. So really low-hanging fruit that we need to be acting on now is solving the waste problem and reducing fossil fuel in kilns by investing at not a very high cost in waste co-processing in cement kilns.
I didn't come with a book, but I think for us, it's not so much about a policy ask. I think we're really at the point of, can we pilot this to see if it works? Can we get some success stories? So we're really more now looking forward to, okay, we have put in place some policy, some guidelines, some standards to be able to guide our industry. Can we now start executing on them? And can we now start tracking progress and seeing whether the policies actually we put in place work? So I think for us, it will be more so, let's pilot and get started and see how it goes, and then we can see what more policy reforms will be needed.
Okay, so for the policies, I want to emphasize this point that whether the financial supervisor sector is ready to regulate this kind of problem, because traditionally they only worry about information transparency of the financial market and also the fair trade, or if there's a monopoly on the financial market or trade market, something like that. But they don't prepare to monitor like something problem like the greenwashing, or if the full financial sector monopolize and invest into the green project, then they think that they can be monopolizing on that, something like that. So those kind of things. So financial supervisory sector does not relate to this kind of problem, and how do they deal with this kind of like really important change from the financial sector. So they should follow of what discussion is happening in the green bond market and sustainable market, and also climate bond. So they should follow this discussion and should be ready to regulate and boosting this financial market to let financial market to invest trigger the transition of the industry decarbonization.
I think what we need from policymakers is probably just policy certainty. So we just need clear direction. And some of that will come from NDCs, but we need more granular plans. So we're pushing for governments to put in place national transition plans. And national transition plans that are with floating names. Currently there might be, we're calling it a transition opportunities plan. The idea of how governments can use these to access private finance, drawing private investment to finance their own transition. I think that's the most important thing they can do. And within those, you provide certainty on your public procurement procedures, on your green definitions, all of these elements. And that will then help to set the tone and provide confidence to the market. I'm just going to add another one because I have got a report out today, which is what I was using earlier on the DFIs. And I think we just need development banks, they're another sort of policymaker, to set strategic and meaningful targets on capital mobilization for climate, integrate that into every single thing they do, build it into the capabilities of investment teams, and then that will really help transform and rapidly accelerate transition.
Thanks. There's a question from the audience.
Thanks. Just listening to you all, I'm wondering, I mean, I think the point about having investable transition plans, and we're all going to have the new NDCs that we're going to have in February. And I guess one of the things I'm thinking about, because I'm from the private sector, is, there's been a lot of talk about the need for blended finance and the role that both philanthropy and DFIs and the private sector need to come together on. And would it be useful, do you think, if we could bring together some, I think what Andrew Shi has been calling, a global deal team, where we could bring sort of private sector expertise across finance, asset management, banking, and so on, as well as the DFIs and the philanthropy and the local governments together to actually try and think about how we create that investability. Because otherwise, I mean, I think you've got the small scale solutions on kilns and things like that. That's terrific and it needs to still happen. But some of this transition in the hard-to-abate areas is really quite big scale. So I'm just wondering, does something like that seem like it might help to address some of the concerns that people are raising?
I would agree. I think that kind of matching up is really important, but also, it's a sort of case of, we know there's demand for finance and we know there's demand for investments. It's just kind of bridging that gap. And that's really important.
We still have a couple minutes, and there's a question in my mind. In the EU, as we all know, there is the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which will target utilise sectors, especially those that are on the so-called carbon leakage list, where there is a risk of being displaced outside of Europe, and therefore there will be an impact tariff on products that are imported into the EU based on their carbon footprint. So in the EU, this seems to be quite a popular measure. Last year at COP, in the negotiations, it came up multiple times as an issue, or as a unilateral measure. At Bologna, we see that there is value in having carbon border adjustment mechanism. It needs to be designed properly. I just wanted to have your take on the carbon border adjustment mechanism, whether or not it is a viable mechanism, whether it will actually be helpful in decarbonising European industry, but also industry in other regions, and if this is something that should be pursued or not.
I mean, I'd say I'm pretty supportive. I think, there's been pushback, some, US, quite a lot of countries seeing it as protectionist, getting lots of anxiety about it, but I mean, it's already working. UK and Canada have announced carbon border adjustment mechanisms of their own. I think there will be lots of copycat ones, and it will drive ambition in the, big exporters to these countries. And the important thing is that we need to help those countries to deliver transition, because there will be countries who are really exposed to the EU who don't have their companies don't necessarily have the capability to transform. And we need to use, and I think we need to use the revenue from the CBAM to make sure we support those countries to meet it, because the CBAM revenue is not really EU money. It's going to come from outside, and I think it's really important that that gets reinvested back into the countries it's coming from to help them.
Yeah, the Global Cement and Concrete Association, its members are supportive of carbon pricing. It enables you to get an investable case for investing in decarbonisation measures. We'd love to wave a wand and for carbon pricing to be introduced across the world instantly, everywhere. It won't, and therefore, in the meantime, if you don't have a CBAM, then it becomes unworkable.
Okay, well, with that, I think it's probably time to close the discussion. So thank you very much. It's been very interesting. We've learned a lot from this panel. Let's we get a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.